you, Pierre?
Pierre Cornway and a building contractor in Clearwater.
Michael Buchkas is with a local planning agency.
Linda Kemp, Mortgage Banking.
Kathleen Beckman, Clearwater City Council.
Carmen Santiago for the people.
Kevin Chenault, nonprofit industry.
Pete Scalia, low-income people.
Gabby Camacho, labor engaged in affordable housing.
And Z. Dacus Harrison, real estate.
Jacqueline Rivera, Clearwater Housing Authority.
Awesome. And I'm Camille Hepting. I represent employers within the city of Clearwater. So the various fields represented by this committee and by its committee members are established by the state statute. Annually, the city's 7-member Neighborhood and Affordable Housing Advisory Board is augmented by 4 additional professionals to make up the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. Item 2.1 is the first item this morning, is to approve the meeting minutes from the November 9th, 2021 Affordable Housing Advisory Committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve item 2.1?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Item 3.1, new business, is to approve the 2021 Local Housing Incentive Strategy Report developed by the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. Mr. Lane will present this item.
Thank you, Chuck Lane. Excuse me, Economic Development and Housing Department Assistant Director. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for your commitment to this board. We have full attendance today, 11 out of 11. That's not an easy thing to do between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so I appreciate your commitment. We had some really great discussions. I appreciate the 3 meetings that we have because it's very helpful to staff. So what we're going to do today, we're just going to, over the first 2 meetings, you recommended some changes to our local housing incentive strategy report, and that's really the, what the mission of this board is to do. So it helps us with how we create policy that affects the cost of housing. So that's really ultimately what the state is asking us to do by creating this board. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of roll through the changes that we've made and then ask for your approval. So let's get started. All right. So, annually, now that we're meeting annually, we used to meet tri-annually. This is going to turn into more of an update. I think it's going to be, there'll be less and less changes to make, but what I don't want is this committee, and same with the NAHAB, I don't want this committee to be a rubber stamp and just let's whip out an update and be done and move on. That's not what this is about. Like I said earlier, staff gets a lot of benefit from the discussions that we have. We have a wide range of professionals on this board, and it's very helpful to us, to Gina Clayton, the Planning and Development Director. So we're going to continue to make sure that we have those healthy discussions, regardless of how few updates we might make on future meetings. Okay, so page 5, really very simply, this is obviously done in strike-through and underline form. That's how we present it to council. We presented it to council yesterday at the work session, and we'll present it again on Thursday. This is the fifth AHAC that we've put together. We did it in 2008. That was the first one. We didn't do it in 2011. We didn't have an allocation that rose to that level where it was required. And then we did it in 2014, 17, 20, and now it's annually, so in 21. All right. As far as where we're at, obviously, we're here December 14th. I will be presenting this to council on December 17th for approval, and then we submit it to the state. And what we do after that is we do an amendment to our local housing assistance plan. I'm sorry, drawing a blank here, and that's obviously our plan for our expenditures of state funds, state housing initiative partnership program funds. So that's where this ends up. All right. So on page 9, okay, we always have a good discussion on this topic. The processing of approvals of development orders or permits for affordable housing projects is expedited to a greater degree than other projects. What you urged us to do is to really create some target timelines, and that's what we brought in here. Projects submitted with this form will receive first priority during the permit review process, as they always have. Continue to strive to complete reviews of single-family home permit reviews within 4 days of the initial submittal and 3 of all subsequent submittals. So It's not necessarily a rule that we have to do that, but that's a target for us to try to achieve, okay? We also discussed, I think Habitat for Humanity is a great example of a firm that builds homes using the same model frequently. So if a firm like that would submit those models, those designs for pre-screening, when those actually come in for a permit, it'll be easier for us to review. So we're going to encourage firms like that to get us those frequently used design plans. It'll help the process quite a bit. All right, so that's what this is here. There are some other very minor additions we've made here that are really just housekeeping issues. Let's see. Going down to page 12. Okay, this is always a very healthy discussion, and I think this area is where we made probably more progress this year than we have in the past. All allowable fee waivers provided for the development or construction of affordable housing. We have impact fees, we have permit fees. There's a lot of stuff that add to the cost of development. So a couple of things that we did here. Really the most important aspects of this is we're updating what this language is here is we updated the information of the multimodal impact fees. That's more of a housekeeping item than anything else. But further down, I think there are three main components to what we did in this area. The Parks and Recreation Department is updating their impact fee structure. They're restructuring that whole program. They have 3 fees. Working with the director of that department, they are poised to recommend that a waiver of those fees for affordable housing. Okay, so I think that's a great start. Their fees are actually going to go up, but for affordable housing, it hopefully will be accepted and they'll be waived. So that's a great start. The Planning and Development Department is recommending a reduction for plan review and permit fees. They're going to do a text amendment to their code. They're going to this Community Development Board later this month, Council in January. They're going to recommend a 75% reduction for projects that qualify for affordable housing. And lastly, with housing funds, where it's allowable, we'll use housing funds to help developers pay those costs that they are now responsible for. So, and those will be on projects that we fund with housing money. So hopefully that's going to be a big help. I think, like I said, I think we made some really good progress here. I think you made some great suggestions. So that's where we're at with that. All right, and moving on. So a lot of these things, such as infrastructure capacity, lot lines reductions, all that stuff we already have. It's already provided for in our code. So we really didn't spend hardly any time on that as a committee. We really didn't need to. But getting into the next page, 28. Okay, this is related to the list of city-owned properties that are appropriate for development of workforce housing. We're required by state statute to maintain this list and keep it on our website. It helps developers know what properties might be available, and they come to us. So, we transfer these lots to developers. What we did is we're going to have we're going to create a policy where we have a competitive process where these developers apply for these lots. It'll be a scoring criteria. So there's a good discussion about bringing in green energy features, green building features into our project. So this might be a good way to do it, where we add to the scoring criteria and give a project a higher score for bringing in that criteria. So that's what we've brought in here, and that's what this change is right here. So that I think that policy should probably be codified February is what I'm thinking. I think it's probably going to be a council action. I have to work with the city manager on that. And page 32. So these are just some very minor changes, housekeeping stuff. It really, these changes are just to clarify what's required versus what we're trying to encourage. Very simple stuff there. Page 33. So we talked a little bit about the marketing. We didn't really change much here. Not much needed to be changed, but there was a good discussion about our marketing efforts. We've just revamped our website. I think it's a huge improvement. Now it's really time to really drive people to that website, to let people, and that's where people are going to understand the programs that we have, the opportunities that are available, the incentives that are in place. So working with the communications department on that to help put that into place. And that will be an ongoing task, certainly. Page 35. Okay. So we're going to evaluate and we discussed this, I think, in meeting 2. You know, we get developers that get in and try to buy vacant lots all over the place in Clearwater. And a lot of times, the reason they're vacant is because they're riddled with code liens. So, you know, we're going to try to create an incentive for affordable housing developers only, where we might be able to pay down those liens to make that property marketable. We have a foreclosure program where we foreclose on code liens. And the goal of that program obviously isn't to take property from people. The goal is to take vacant, blighted property and produce affordable housing, affordable housing in this case. So this is consistent with that program. There is revenue in that program because sometimes property sells at auction and we get revenue from it. So as long as that fund is healthy, I'm going to recommend we use some of those funds to pay down these liens. Okay. So next page. We had a discussion about mentoring. I think Habitat for Humanity played a role in a mentoring program. I think I'd really like to start with the CEO of that organization to really see what options we have. I know Mr. Scalia had a lot of comments about mentorship and how it might help. So I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to see if we can put that into place somehow, some way. And page 37. So we talked about the changes we made to our down payment assistance program, and it seems to have spurred some volume. We increased our subsidy. We didn't have any DPAs last year, down payment assistance loans last year. We made that change in June. In the last quarter of the fiscal, we processed 3 loans. So it looks like it's helping. You know, we're going to keep an eye on that. We may need to increase that even more. The market's just insane right now for everybody, not just for folks that, you know, in these income ranges. So, and then the only other change we really made, and we discussed it in the first meeting, was to the principles, the values principles in our vision statement. Very simple stuff. But you know, we kind of started with this, so I think it's a good way to kind of end it. Our vision statement is the City of Clearwater will encourage the development of a diverse supply of housing that is safe, affordable, sustainable, and well-designed that blends into the character of all the city's neighborhoods proximate to public amenities and employment opportunities, which supports an inclusive community and the diverse needs of residents. So we'll start with that again next year when we reconvene this committee. Like I said, I'll go to council on Thursday night, present the changes that you've all recommended. At that time, council, assuming they approve the item, which I'm sure they will, this committee will automatically sunset, and we'll reconvene it again in the fall. So I'd imagine I'd probably reach out to a lot of the same folks, because I think you did a really good job this time around. So I appreciate your help. I will take any questions at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Lane? Go ahead.
You know, as I looked at all of this work, and you've done such a good job in facilitating the discussions, and I think we made really good changes and suggestions. I'm proud of that work. As I got thinking about things, you know, as an elected official, I want to make sure that the city remains competitive and aggressive and creative. And I mean competitive as in with our surrounding municipalities, that we're right up there with other cities doing our part, that we can be seen as leaders. I'm going to continue to advocate for more general funds to serve people in need related to housing, and to help fund our partners who are trying to find housing for people who are struggling in our county. I want to try to put some more pressure on surrounding communities to join in financially, and so I've spoken to the mayor a little bit about that. Perhaps that countywide housing compact will help bring some unity and some more engagement. I want to make sure that our goals and numbers are front-facing and easy to find and updated regularly, and I think that website is a great start, so that's fantastic. And then I because this is my last time meeting with you all up here, but I'm wondering, how can we engage some businesses and churches maybe in our community more to step up and sponsor a family or sponsor a home or do something to help us in this work in finding more housing options. And then the last thing I wanted to ask is, because I'm still learning too, is, we don't, this board or the work that we do doesn't touch on permanent supportive housing. Is that correct?
It can. Permanent supportive housing is considered by HUD affordable housing. It's not a shelter.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that we could discuss, yes.
Because as we serve on the COC, I mean, that's huge.
Sure.
Permanent supportive housing. So this is housing for people with disabilities or that will need Section 8, right? Supportive housing in a number of ways. So is that something we could look at next year? Have we ever looked at it? Where is the time and opportunity for our city?
Yeah, I can make sure that we have that discussion. We can have it at the NAHAB, we can have it with this board next year as well. Permanent supportive housing is a very important step in the process to get people stabilized into permanent housing. So yeah, it's something critical that we should discuss, certainly.
Yeah, because I worry about that. I mean, that's a big part of our topic with the continuum of care that's countywide, and it's just huge. I mean, it's, yeah, okay.
Chuck, just thinking on that real quick, we may want to, if that's a direction we want to discuss, the NAHAB may need to discuss that before this group joins, because permanent supportive housing, you need the support of the case management. And without case management, permanent supportive housing is not as effective. So we may, as the NAHAB, want to discuss that, because we may want to look towards our funding categories, especially as we go into the grant cycle, about whether we would like to encourage some of them to apply for the case management side.
Yeah, we've helped HEP this year, last year, with improvements to some of their supportive housing, permanent supportive housing projects. So it's something we're very familiar with. It does fit into our program pretty nicely. So.
Maybe it's just about the way that we categorize and look. You were talking about figures and goals and objectives that we can quantify, right? Maybe separating that so that it's its own category and we can look at it kind of like by itself instead of grouped in with something else would be helpful.
That seems
as
like
well.
a good idea.
Yeah.
It is a little bit of a different animal. There's a lot less revenue in those projects. So what we typically do is we do loans that are subject to cash flow.
Right.
So it works out pretty well.
And you mentioned sponsorships and things like that, and I think this goes back to the conversation that Chuck brought up of how do we encourage mentorship among those developers, because when you look at what Habitat's doing particularly is they're engaging, I mean, I want to say 80% of the businesses in our area, it's probably a higher number, to participate at whatever level they're comfortable with so that everybody feels included in the affordable housing, aspect, right? And it's not just, some do it for the marketing, some do it because it's the right thing to do, some do it because they feel very helpless and they're like, what can we do that helps, even in just a little bit? I think having that mentorship, growing that mentorship aspect, whether it's just, hey, I can help you with the permitting process, or hey, I can help you with growing the way your sponsorships are going, is going to help that, because it's going to bring everybody to that same understanding that, there's a way to do it and there's a very successful, example in place for those that are interested in doing that. It's especially true because employers are losing employees because of the lack of affordable housing. So a lot of them are starting, some are starting now, but some have started a long time ago, looking at it and saying, there's nothing we as a company can do to, create housing, but what can we do? What organizations can we support that do that that really have that, mission. So I think if we continue to focus on that through, either this group next year or just having conversation through the NAHAB over the next year, I think we can come up with ideas to encourage that mentorship, and I think they'll bring a big impact. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this item at this time? If so, please come forward and spell your last name for the clerk. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve item 3.1?
I'll set the motion.
Second? Oh.
Harmon.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, item is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4 is citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda. Is there anyone here to speak on items that are not on today's agenda? Okay, seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to the next item. Does the board have any old or new business to discuss? I'll start with you, Pierre. Do you have anything? Okay.
I have an article from today's Tampa Bay Times that I printed out for you all, and it's about DeSantis's budget. He's proposed $355 million for affordable. Thank you so much for affordable housing, and there are some key stats in there, and I just thought I'd share it with you. It's a couple of things that I annotated. Florida leads the nation in housing unaffordability, with 56.5% of renters spending 30% or more of their income on housing. Tampa led the nation, along with Phoenix and Las Vegas, with the highest rent increases in the last year, climbing by 34% or more since the start of the pandemic. And most workers in Florida can't afford to rent a typical two-bedroom apartment. A full-time worker would need to earn $24.43 an hour to pay the typical rent of $12.70 a month, but the median wage in Florida is $17.26 an hour. And so while it's fantastic that the governor is proposing this $355 million, the legislature has to approve it. And that's where I think we need to put pressure. And we need to be prepared. The session starts January 11th, and our city has a new legislative priorities page on our website that should direct us to when certain types of legislation is going to be heard and how to take action.
Great.
So just wanted to share that with you all.
Thank you. All right, we're going to continue. Any new business, Carmen? Your old business? No? Okay.
Nope.
Gabby, anything else?
Sorry.
No? Okay. Okay, great. I just wanted to bring up something that we discussed at last meeting, and I know we already talked about the website, but Chuck had asked us to share feedback on the website and some of those updates that were made. So if you haven't taken the time, go into myclearwater.com under the government section. There's an affordable housing page. My question to you, Chuck, was, is there currently a shorter, a specific URL that was set up for that page, so that if somebody is trying to visit that page directly, there's something that exists, so directly go on that page?
myclearwater.com/housing.
Okay, perfect. So that's directly.
Affordable housing. Housing gets there too, but we'll say affordable housing.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, especially when we speak about, partnering with the chamber and other organizations to kind of push that information out, I think if we have like a simplified URL, it definitely helps. So that's great. And then I also made a note last meeting that we were going to talk about the analytics on the old site versus the new site, which is still, I think it's still too soon to tell, but I think it's something that as we reconvene this group next year, would be great for one of the first orders of business to say, since we've had almost a year of that new website, can we look at kind of like the visits and the clicks and all of that?
Yeah, I'll agenda that with the NAHAB as well, so we'll
Okay.
have that conversation year round.
Awesome. That's great. All right, Mr. Lane, do you have anything additional to report?
So we have a member of the NAHAB leaving us. She's turned out. Linda Kemp, first appointed May 7th, 2009.
Wow.
So I think that leaves Mr. Chenault as the senior board member in terms of tenure. So we had the benefit of her guidance for more than 12 years. So all seats on this board represent specific segments of the community. Some seats are more easily filled than others, right? So as staff, we're supposed to make an effort to find a suitable replacement when a board member terms out. And if we're not able to find that person, council can extend another term. So at the end of Linda's second term 4 years ago, let's just say I didn't look real hard. We don't need to put that in the minutes. She's a very valuable board member. You know, Linda is not the rah-rah type. She's not the cheerleader. She's a very thoughtful thinker. I can tell you that she and Mr. Scalia are not cut from the same cloth in that regard. But when she speaks, you know it's from a place of experience, a great deal of intelligence, common sense. So I always felt a sense of reassurance when Linda was on board with something that we were doing. So I just want to say thank you. And if the seat that you occupy becomes available again, I will be calling you.
Don't change your phone number, Linda. Thank you. Chuck, thank you, Linda, for your service.
And if I may, Madam Chair, you may want to see if some of the board members want to have some comments about Ms. Kemp. So.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, I appreciate very much your guidance, and you're definitely a role model, so thank you for your time in the board.
It's been a pleasure being on the board and getting to know everybody. And what a change. In 11 years, it's really come a long way.
Yeah.
Linda, I echo what you just said about the board coming a long way, especially the NAHAB board. When I first started, you and I had a few conversations about the direction of the board, and I appreciate the guidance and the support that you provided the board over the years. As I came on board, it meant a lot to me as the newbie. And your support to the city of Clearwater is highly appreciated by us on the board, and also I'm sure by many of the city staff and folks in the city who really don't know what you're doing, but we all appreciate your support.
Yes, Ms. Kemp, I just want to say thank you so much for your time and your dedication to the board.
Thank you for helping us learn. I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
So I only had the pleasure of being 1 year on the board with you, but I've actually known Linda for a very long time, and I've always called her the guru of affordable housing, especially as lenders. She is one of the best to work with, and just her level of knowledge, I'm sure, has been a pleasure on this board as it is working with you personally.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service, and I hope to see you again here.
What are you going to do with your Tuesday mornings every second Tuesday now?
Get to the office earlier.
I know.
More loans.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Linda. All right, so the local housing incentive strategy report we presented to City Council on Thursday, like Chuck mentioned, and then following approval of that agenda item, the work of the 2021 Affordable Housing Advisory Committee will be complete. Following adjournment of this meeting, we will take a brief moment to reset the dais for a meeting of the NAHAB. So we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This isn't it.
We're good? Okay. Are we ready, everyone? All right, today's meeting of the Neighborhood and Affordable Housing Advisory Board is called to order on December 14th, 2021. Welcome. The agenda is over by the entrance of chambers, and please remember to turn off your cell phones. To ensure a complete record of the board's action, we ask that each individual wishing to speak clearly state your name and spell your last name for the clerk. And now I will ask the board members to introduce themselves and identify the field you each represent. We'll start with you, Lindsay.
Lindsay Dacus Harrison, real estate.
Gabby Camacho, Affordable Housing Builder.
Pete Scalia, advocate for low-income persons in connection with affordable housing.
Kevin Chenault with the nonprofit industry.
Carmen Santiago for the people.
And I am your board chair, Camille Hefting, and I represent the employers in Clearwater. All right, item 2.1 is approval of minutes. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of the board's July 13th meeting. May I have a motion to approve item 2.1?
I make a motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Item 3 is citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda. Is there anyone here to speak to items not on today's agenda? All right, seeing no one come forward, we will move on to the next item. Item 4.1 is the presentation by the city's sustainability coordinator, Sheridan Boyle. Good morning.
I didn't bring it in a PowerPoint form.
That's fine.
Apologize.
Yeah, it's okay. Will it come up? Can you guys see it here?
No.
Yes, please.
Oh. It's coming. Yep.
Perfect.
Perfect.
So good morning. My name is Sheridan Boyle and I work as the Sustainability Coordinator. I am going to briefly go over some of the projects we're currently working on across the city. And then I'm just going to touch at the end for some things that are really relevant to your board in terms of our green print plan that was just updated and improved. So first, I always start generally when I go into schools or I just did a talk at SPC or neighborhood associations, and I ask people, what does sustainability mean? And I always get wide-eyed looks right after that, because generally we have a thought of what sustainability means, but sometimes it's hard to put it into words. Frequently it's hard to put it into words. So often I'll get kind of one-off answers like it's recycling, or it's solar power, or it's electric vehicles, or it's planting trees. And thankfully the answer is all of those, but it really has more of a solidified definition that really came about from the United Nations. So sustainability is defined as the ability of a community currently to thrive without sacrificing the ability of future generations to do the same. So when we look at sustainability, it's very much how do we do well now, but then also has that future thought of how do we do well now and ensure that we are continuing those conditions for the future. So sustainability really has a triple bottom line, which is also known as the 3 Ps, and it's people, planet, profit. And so it's not always just the environment. It's very much looking at how does improving environmental conditions or improving human conditions benefit all 3, so people, planet, profit. For people, we see that aspects include public health, equity, quality of life, certainly affordable housing. Planet, we have the reduction of greenhouse gases, the improvement of natural resources, and the improvement of habitat. And then for profit, we see economic growth, job creation, and again, equity. So I am going to very briefly touch on some of the projects that we're working on now. A little bit of background information is the city first created its sustainability plan in 2011, and it started with our 2007 greenhouse gas emission levels. So what it did was 2007 is our baseline year. It added up all of the greenhouse gas emissions from our utility use or electricity, our natural gas use, our transportation fuels, the gas that is emitted from sending items to the landfill, and then also our water use. And it gave us that baseline level. Our initial plan created a few goals to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions. And then in 2019, my position was created. I conducted a second greenhouse gas inventory because a lot had changed in the city over the 9 years, and that was based on our 2018 levels, or previous year. We looked at all the same conditions across the entire community, not just city operations, just like the previous baseline. So our residential, industrial, commercial, and municipal sectors. And then we said, okay, so how did we do compared to our 2007 levels? Thankfully, we did reduce our emissions across the community. We saw a 12% reduction from 2007. And, you know, we did do a lot, but I will say it also showed us the power of our electricity consumption, because majority of the reason why we had that 12% reduction is that Duke Energy slightly increased its renewable energy portfolio. Mm-hmm. So we were using a little bit less electricity when we added it up, but really that main difference came from just 1% to 2% of renewable energy being added to the mix. And based on our 2018 inventory, we then set new goals. So we decided we'd like to pursue, much like the first plan, a 25% reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions below our 2007 levels by 2035, which is a mouthful. And then our new goal is to see an 80% reduction below our 2007 levels by 2050. So we are currently focusing on a number of areas internally to kind of serve as a model for the community, and we are also now focusing externally to make sure that we're providing those same opportunities to the public. So right now we're concentrating on our own fleet. We purchased 18 hybrids this year, and most of those were for our police department. We have new fleet management software called Faster that really allows us to track exactly how far our vehicles are driving each day, and how much they're idling, how much gas they're consuming. All this data really helps us identify kind of where the excess is, maybe where we shouldn't be driving as much, but also it helps us with our next vehicle purchase, making sure that we're right-sizing the vehicle, we're selecting the vehicle that has the same purpose, but then also it can make recommendations for, okay, you have an internal combustion vehicle now, here's what it's doing, here's the hybrid or electric vehicle we would recommend to replace it. So that software has really been a great asset. We recently set a green fleet goal, and we intend to transition 100% of our light-duty vehicles, so our passenger vehicles, to either hybrid or electric. We are currently working on getting more charging stations into the city, because that's really what's critical, is the infrastructure. Sometimes it's the chicken or the egg scenario, but you have to have charging stations in order to expand your fleet. And so we're working on that now. And we put together a green fleet committee. And so it's myself, our fleet manager, our purchasing officer, and then our city manager, who has a huge interest in electrification, as well as 2 members from our operational departments, our police department and our public utilities department. We are also working on expanding solar throughout our operations. So we, I think it was in 2020, signed on to participate in the Duke Clean Energy Connection Program. And what that does, it allows us to not have to build the solar on site. Duke will build the solar in a rural community starting next year. And the city will be able to receive 40% of its electricity from those solar panels. We are also currently doing...
Could you repeat that, what you just said?
Yeah. So the Duke Clean Energy Connection Program, Duke is building, starting next year and into the next 5 years, more rural solar farms, essentially, right, where they can have a lot of land to put a vast amount of solar arrays on it. They have a program where municipal governments, there's a carve-out. There's also a carve-out for low-income residents as well as commercial sectors. And what we do is we, for the first 5 years, are charged with a small fee on the accounts that we select. About 5 to 7 years, the fee kind of balances out with the credit that is also there from the solar. And then from year 7 onwards, the life expectancy for solar panels is somewhere between 25 to 30 years. We then have a credit on our bill, so it actually reduces our bill moving forward, and 40% of our electricity then comes from that renewable source. We are currently in the midst of a solar feasibility assessment with an engineering firm. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to be sure that we are looking at our city facilities and putting solar on the buildings that make the most sense, rather than just kind of anyone without a rhyme or reason. So we are working with that firm. Currently, they're analyzing 67 city buildings. we're looking at, what is the amount that the building consumes, what is the roof space, is there any shading that would really make it inefficient or not as optimal for solar, and is there capacity in the building's even electrical system for the addition of solar. And so at the end of that study, it's supposed to be probably a month or two before it's complete, month or two moving forward, so around the February timeline, where it's going to allow us to select the buildings that are leverage points. We currently have a goal of that 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and we're modeling that in our own facilities, where we'd like to see an 80% reduction in our own facilities' consumption of electricity. So really pairing that with Duke's program of maybe applying those to accounts where we can't put solar, and then putting solar on the buildings that are most optimal for it. We are also participating with the Solar United Neighbors Co-op. So that is really open to Pinellas County as a whole. But what they do, that's a nonprofit organization that helps residents form co-ops. It walks them through the process of creating their own committee so that they can then solicit bids from solar installers and then select a solar installer, and then everyone in that co-op, sometimes it's around 100 households, gets that solar at a really great discount because of the bulk purchasing. And it really works out because the solar installer now has a ton of homes that they're going to install that solar on, and the residents get it at a much more affordable price.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question you may not have the answer to. On the photo you're showing, that little yellow house has got
Yes.
solar panels. How much electricity comes through those solar panels? Do you know? Is it 10%?
So for that house, I don't know. I can get that to you because that's actually a home that's in Clearwater that got
Right.
benefit from it, and it's gonna differ for every house.
I guess the question, my base question is this: if you covered your house with solar panels, similar to what we're seeing there, what's the savings? Is there a way of finding that out?
Mm-hmm.
Because for what this committee does, and going forward, there seems to be a logic here of moving into this, but I don't know how much those panels cost, just using that as an example. I don't know what it would do to I wish Pierre was here right now. I don't know what it would do to the cost of the structure of making it affordable housing. But then again, once it's up there, I'm not trying to be funny. Will that power your radio, or will that run your house most of the day? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd like to find that answer.
So a lot of that comes down to how many you can actually fit on your roof, right? So a
Right.
smaller building it's not going to completely offset your house by any means. What we're seeing is, at least with the residential sector, the return on investment is much quicker because of the federal incentives that exist, where with municipal installations, we don't really get the tax credits. We don't get the tax credits. So we don't have, we have a return on investment that's sometimes 13 to 17 years, where with residential, we kind of see it more in the 6 to 7 year range. And it depends on, the house, how much you consume, and then how many you can fit in. I think, we see sometimes that they're able to offset like 50% to 60%. But again, that's going to be building specific. I will say the best time to do a solar installation is when your roof is getting redone. Mm-hmm. And then we also see that in Florida, solar panels can actually extend the life of your roof because the sun beats on them rather than on the roof itself. I'm trying to think if there's any other things that you said there that I wanted to mention. Anyways, the way that solar works in Florida is it's net metered. So it doesn't necessarily plug directly into your house. And the benefit of that, at least, is from a resiliency perspective, right? That if there's some issue that happens with a solar panel, it's not gonna really affect the entire grid. But also, if you were to produce an excess in 1 month, that goes on to a credit that at the end of the year, then you would get the wholesale price of. Mm-hmm. So you would, if you generate an excess, you then get payment from Duke for that. Some other things that we're working on is local food. We're really proud of the community gardens that we have already in Clearwater. We have the Clearwater Community Garden, the Beacon Food Forest, and then there's a really cute little garden on our MLK Center I know Mr. Eon there, he does a drum circle with the kids, like, I think one Saturday a month, and it's really, really cool to see that evolve. We also have a community garden grant to encourage neighborhood associations and nonprofits to either start a community garden or renovate a community garden. And then most recently, in terms of urban agriculture expanding, City Council approved backyard chickens. So.
Yay.
Most recently, so in terms of public engagement, that's a huge one for our sustainability plan because it's really hard to do anything if you don't have buy-in, right? If you don't have educated citizens, we're really gung-ho about this. So in terms of public engagement, we have held a yearly sustainability conference with the Clearwater Neighborhoods Coalition. They call it the Building Better Neighborhoods group, and this last year for 2021, it was virtual. And they really wanted to concentrate on gardening because they saw an increase in interest through the pandemic that a lot of people really took that up. So we had a 4-part virtual series that was about how to grow food either at home or in a community garden, how to support wildlife by gardening with Florida-friendly plants, how to have a sustainable landscape by following Florida-friendly landscape principles, and then also how to build your soil health through things like composting and how to help our watersheds by not using synthetic fertilizers in excess. And so we brought in experts in all of those fields, and it was a really great time. We also had a backyard composting program that was, if it was virtual, and if you participated online and you're a Clearwater resident, you could pick up your own compost bin. We opened it to the public. It was a 1-hour course, and we had over 1,500 people participate, and 500 Clearwater residents picked up their compost bin. We currently have a storm drain mural program that I hope you guys are familiar with. It's a really fun one where anyone in the city can apply to paint a storm drain mural with a creative and environmental message. It's been really fun for our schools mostly to get into, but we also see a lot of our community and neighborhood associations participate. And most recently, we just had the big cleanup Clearwater. It was the largest cleanup that we've had across the city. It was a week long with businesses participating Monday through Friday to clean up the streets that they are on. And then that Saturday, we had the day that was all open to the public. We had sites all across the city, I think 1,500 or so volunteers, and over 6,000 pounds of trash was collected. The last thing I wanted to touch on is I mentioned our sustainability plan, and there are a few strategies that are really relevant probably for you all. The first one is that we have a goal in that plan by 2030 that we want to see a 20% reduction in energy costs for low-income residents. We also would like to see rooftop solar installed on 1,000 low to moderate income homes. And we would also like to see an emergency cooling center located within a 10-minute walk in low-income neighborhoods. That last one is more of a resilience component and a public health concern. The predictions for the increase of heat moving forward are very high. And we want to make sure that for the residents who are more energy insecure, where they might not be able to continue paying for that electricity bill when we're in 100+ degree temperatures, have access to a place where they can cool down when it's really dependent on or really important for their health. And by 2050, we would also like to see, and we're aiming for 50% of all of our residents use electric vehicles. That's kind of a trend we're seeing across the industry anyhow. We see many of our major manufacturers as well as the federal government setting those goals. The main point that I bring that up is for low-income residents, it's really going to be important that they have access to charging stations to accommodate that. Because the number one reason people don't buy an electric vehicle is they are afraid that they're not going to be able to charge. Yeah. And for people living in multifamily units, frequently they don't have access to a charging station like someone would in a single family home. And then lastly, the plan does have a strategy that's super relevant. It's called our performance standard strategy, and it's in our green buildings and energy section. And it directs the city to encourage developers to incorporate green building practices. So I know the balance is with affordable housing, right, is how does it remain affordable to build? However, energy conservation is super important for the residents that are going to be in affordable housing. Currently, we see across the United States that 31% of households struggle to pay their energy bills. And that's something that's directly on the tenant rather than the landlord. So, of course, in the actual design of the building, you can do things like build to LEED standards, Energy Star standards that can come with a higher cost to build. You can do things like incorporating solar energy or building the roof solar ready, so that maybe the building or the city in the future can follow up with a grant to actually install the solar on that building, and it makes it much more affordable to do that. You can do things like including electric vehicle charging stations into the off-street parking, or at least making the off-street parking EV capable. And what that means is it has all the conduit and wiring to allow that charging station, future charging station, to go in, so that you don't have to really, go through all the asphalt and lay down the conduit then. And we see that it reduces the cost about 3 times to go ahead and just do the conduit rather than not. Other things to do, using a cool roof if solar is not possible. And a cool roof is, it's not even a very specialized, but it's a type of roofing material that's white, and it doesn't absorb heat, it reflects it, and that can greatly reduce the energy bill. As well as whenever you're retrofitting a building, just making sure that you're using really high performing windows, you have a good standard of insulation, using Energy Star appliances and lighting. And then some other lower costs that aren't necessarily related to energy, more kind of to the public health component, is using paint and carpet that have low VOCs, volatile organic compounds. That really helps with human health. And then, of course, because I'm a huge proponent of urban agriculture, include a community garden in some of the designs as a way of building community, but then also access to some fresher foods. So that's kind of the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions or elaborate on anything further.
You mentioned the goals that you have by 2030. Do you guys have a budget to help offset the cost for affordable housing builders to include those items in?
We don't at the moment, but we're kind of brainstorming some elaborate ways, whether that's using like grant funding, to see what that would look like.
Any other questions or comments? I just want to make a quick comment because you raised kind of like the question on solar. I think one of the issues with solar is that there's a ton of information out there, and at the same time there's no information out there, in the sense that, in the last 6 months I've had at least 3 different companies come to my house and tell me that there was a way for me to put solar, and it was no cost, and it was low cost, it was this much, that much, if you qualify, if you don't. And to answer your question, I live in the 1,500 square foot house, and they told me that they could put 29 panels on my roof. I don't have trees that go above my roof, so it would be kind of perfect, right? And that would create about 80% of the energy that we currently use. So it's a good number. I think people are just concerned and confused because they just don't know what the right solution is. And I love the idea of the co-op, but sometimes you live in neighborhoods like we do where we might be the only house that's interested, at least for the time being. And so it would be nice to have a little bit more guidance when it comes to, I'm a citizen, so who do I go to ask, hey, is this company reliable? What do you think of their business model? Is it something that you would recommend? Is it something that you've seen people have success with? Because, the salesperson is only going to tell me what they want me to hear in that way. And there's a ton of incentives, and there's actually companies now that, because the incentives from the federal government are so good, they completely take away the cost of putting those on when you first sign on to get them installed. And then they receive the incentives on your behalf, and that's how they pay for the installation, kind of like in the back end. So there's many ways that they've done it, and then there's companies that have come and gone, there's companies that have been there for a long time. It's just kind of confusing because we're used to, hey, I know if Duke calls me, it's legit. But if these companies are calling me, how legitimate is it? And how, it's a big deal, especially if it's going to damage my roof, if it's going to, somebody's going to come and put something on my roof. It's important that we have some information and some reassurance, I think, in that sector.
Yeah, I understand that for sure. I do want to mention the solar co-op program. It doesn't have to be your entire neighborhood.
Okay.
So you could be the one person in your neighborhood and everyone else is in Dunedin and St. Pete or something.
Okay.
So that's fine, as long as you're within Pinellas County.
Okay.
And the benefit of that, right, is that you have this nonprofit organization that's been doing this for years and is very familiar with the installers.
Absolutely.
For the other components, I completely agree. I think, like with anything, any kind of contractor that you're dealing with, right? You have your great ones and you have your rogue ones, and it's really hard to differentiate. The city plays a fine line there, right? Because we can't recommend any vendors, and we wouldn't do that for any other thing, like roofs or likewise. But then again, it's something that we're really wanting residents to pursue. So we've had this discussion. I'm part of a Pinellas County Sustainability and Resilience Network where we have sustainability directors and coordinators across the county get together. We've talked about this a lot, and it's like, what is the role that we can play? And I think hopefully it's, as the industry continues developing and evolving, we'll see either more nonprofit rating systems or the Better Bureau rating that they might have, and just trying to do your due diligence, because it can be difficult with contractors. Yeah. I agree.
That's great. I'm gonna look into that co-op.
We have had an experience. I mean, we have so far installed three systems in houses, and 100% electricity drawn by the solar panels. And I mean, the cost has been anywhere between $11,000 to $22,000, for a 3, 4, or 5 bedroom home. Now, it's a great opportunity for the homeowner. And when we have done that, it's because the company has approached us, and it's probably marketing related, no cost to us and no cost to the homeowner. So it's a win-win situation, because we don't pay anything, they don't pay anything. All the marketing is there, and they end up with a house that is fully solar. And it is 100% solar. The only fee that they pay, they have to pay the minimum fee for Duke Energy, which is, I think it's like $12, yeah. But everything else runs out of solar. One of the houses has solar for about 8 years now, and it's still pretty functional, And it takes about half of the, if you imagine like a gable roof, it's just one half is just for the solar. So it's very doable, especially for new construction. There's really nothing that we do additional to the roof structure to support the panels. But of course, the house is already built, structurally sound, It's a win-win situation when you have the budget to pay for it.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, when the homeowners are approached, we always, mention to them, make sure that you research the companies, that you get at least 3 proposals, because most of them, they do it, and then, it's like you said, all these great things have been offered, no cost, but then at the end, they end up paying more for that system for the long term than paying for electricity. I mean, they have come to my house too, and when they give me all the pricing, I pay much less for electricity, right? So it doesn't make sense financially to go solar. So, the competition has to be there, the incentives have to be there for people to actually jump on it and do it. I think many people are willing to do it. They want to do the right thing for the environment, but at the same time, the cost is just too high, especially for affordable housing homeowners, So.
And to what you're saying, and to what this committee exists for, and for the committee that we just concluded that meeting, it seems to me, as I sit here, and I think everybody recognizes that solar power is a good, clean energy. Absolutely. But it also seems to me, and Chuck, I'm kind of directing this at you, with all the money that's floating around out there from the federal government, it seems that we should be able to connect the few dots here for, at least when you're building, or if you approach the city to do some affordable housing, this gets worked in, and you mentioned it in the last meeting, this gets worked into the deal somehow, because we get the city one step closer to having more things with solar power. But also, it goes to the very thing that I discussed with you before the meeting began. It's one more point that we should be able to lay out to the public that says, look, affordable housing, this is how we're doing this here in Clearwater. We're building these affordable housing units. They're built to code, but they're also state of the art. And we're not doing this on the taxpayer's dime, for the most part, if I'm not mistaken. and look what we're accomplishing, and kind of use that to help roll these programs forward in a positive way so that other people can get on board. There's our website next year, right? Is look at what we've done in affordable housing here in Clearwater. I'm just kind of, as I always do, there's an idea here. There's something here that needs to have these dots connected. Habitat's able to do it. I mean, you've got some homes obviously that are working. Why can't we maybe make this, I don't want to say a bone of contention, but perhaps something this board does next year, beginning next year? It's like, that's a cause that we take up somehow, if I'm using the right words.
You know, the reason I've asked Sheridan to present today is to get the conversation going, because it needs to be started. And we're going to work together. You know, it's a balancing act. I mean, we don't want to transfer that cost onto the developer. They'll go elsewhere if it's a required feature. We certainly don't want to transfer that cost onto the homeowner. And we want to make our housing dollars, want to stretch those as far as we can. So there's a lot to consider. You know, we have to look at the various funding sources and figure out how to get these things into place. And it's not just solar. You know, there's other things that we can incorporate into these, you know, into these properties, into these homes. But you know, I wanted you to get to know Sheridan. We're going to be working with her. We're going to try to find a way to incorporate some of these features into our structures that we fund. I don't know how it's all going to come together yet, but we're having a conversation, and that's why, you know, I'm thankful that she was able to do this today. And you know, I'm sure you'll see her again at one of our meetings.
You know what's interesting is, if a company has sponsored an entire system multiple times for Habitat, there is a gain for them in doing that. And does that mean that in a few years you guys will be able to say to your homeowner candidates, you can get a solar install at the same time your house is being built, and it's going to add a little bit to your mortgage, but it wouldn't be the full amount? Let's say you would be able to have 50% of it still donated and whatnot. I mean, those things are already happening, which means that there's going to be companies that are going to be interested in being in the forefront of that movement. And we may be able to say, you know, we're looking for, maybe it's an RFP process, we're looking for installers that are willing to be the official, you know, affordable housing in Clearwater solar panel installer, whatever we want to call it. And that creates a grant program where, you know, at least half of the cost or whatever we can do with the federal dollars is paid for, because it's not just, I mean, we're talking about affordable housing and rent prices going up and all these things. I don't know if you looked at your electricity bills lately, but that is also going up like crazy. We don't have a say in the fact that next year my bill is going to be 11% higher than it was this year for no reason other than that's the number that they decided to go up. So we have to think of these things too, because if your house is affordable but you can't afford to cool it, then is it really affordable housing? Yeah. You know, it's not just the one component. You have to think of that too. I mean, if water all of a sudden went through the roof, then at that point, no housing is affordable anymore. So it's definitely important that we're on the forefront of that, and it's definitely a conversation that has already started if these installers decide to do it for $0, you know what I mean? Like for the tax break and then for the marketing. Yeah. There's definitely something out there.
Now, to Peter's point, there could be also some partnership between the city and the affordable housing builders where, you know, say that if I add an EV charging station, then maybe I get a reduced impact fee. So something along the line that, you know, we are gaining and going towards that direction, because you have goals, you know, and, you know, the goals have to be backed up with actions, right? So maybe we start working on something along that line, you know?
And exactly. And it's just the beginning. It's like planting a seed right now. You have, to what Camille said, you know, if there are companies out there and they're willing to do some kind of a deal to put your, you know, because they want to sell solar panels, and that's business, we get that, but maybe the fact that they work with affordable housing or with the city or with the affordable housing developers, they can take that and then turn that and spin that as part of their, like, Good Guy Tuna Company, right? They do this so when they're out there selling a solar panel to Camille, they could say part of this is helping the affordable housing people who can't afford. I don't know.
Yeah.
And we're way off topic, but it seems to me that this is the committee
To do it, yeah.
that needs to take charge of this conversation, of where it all gets connected.
Yeah, and to
This
the
is where the
private,
dots have to start getting joined, no?
and to the private citizen, if you are gonna install a system in your house, you go to the website and you'll see those 3 providers, they're already been, screened, and the reviews are there because they have installed, 20, systems and, so
And
it's
to your
there.
point, if I know that one installer over the other is, supporting, sponsoring, whatever word you want to use, affordable housing units in my community, that's going to make me want to choose them more
Yeah.
as a private citizen that's doing that.
So do we make, I've never done this, so correct me if I'm, do we make a motion, or can I make a motion that this subject be something that becomes a focal point of our committee going forward? No? Is that
I mean,
possible?
I can tell you that it is. Sheridan and I met with, and Denise and I met with Sheridan to start this conversation. We're going to continue it. We're going to continue to find ways. We can, at any meeting, you want to make some recommendations to me on what we should look into, what we should evaluate, what we might do. I'm all ears, as always. So I don't know if a motion is necessary,
Okay.
but
I wasn't sure either, that's why.
Do you have any programs? So when I worked for the city of Largo, we had a green energy, part of their housing rehab program. They had a green energy grant for certain things, and there were certain criteria of things. So when they were coming to have, to the housing rehab program, where they needed a roof or something like that, if they got certain things with green energy, it was just a grant. It wasn't included in the loan that they were getting and receiving for the housing rehab. Is there anything like that at Clearwater right now with your rehabilitation program?
I'll have to look into Largo's program specifically for that. We do require Energy Star appliances and things like that. We don't separate our typical rehab program from a green build, rehab versus otherwise. I'll look more at what Largo's doing.
Yeah, it was, this 10 years ago when I was
Yeah,
in the city,
yeah.
so, but yeah, there was a green component, and I believe those things were grants, so that wasn't part of their loan. So I'm just thinking if somebody's coming to your rehab program for a roof or something like that, as you said, building these roofs so that they can take solar, if we can have a component of that rehab program that offers to, if they, obviously there has to be set criteria for it, but offers a grant towards or a portion of it if they agree to put solar on the home.
Yeah, that is a good opportunity in our rehab program to if nothing else, advise these homeowners on how they can make improvements.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can make them under our program to make their energy bills, a lot easier to manage from then on. When we do a rehab, we have the homeowner in front of us. We're talking about project scope. Maybe it's something we can incorporate into that. I think that's something we need to look into.
And not even mentioning how much the value of the home is going up if they're putting solar panels on it. So we're talking about, specific neighborhoods in Clearwater, especially with this committee that are low-income areas and whatnot. Imagine you put solar panels on those roofs or on a few roofs in that community in the next 2-3 years, that neighborhood is just gonna go up in value, and that's gonna help everybody that lives in that neighborhood, not to mention the city itself.
It's tricky with appraisals with the
Yeah.
value. I've sold quite a few solar homes, so there is no value as far as appraisal with solar panels.
I'm sorry, there is no,
There is no
added value.
added value to the value of the home with solar panels unless they are completely paid off. So they look at, what the appraisal in California, because there's a study in California, they
Yeah.
actually do add, and I know a lot of the solar companies pitch it and say, this is gonna add X amount of value to your home. It does not as far as an appraisal unless they're paid off. So like two homes that I sold the year, really where the benefit comes in, the homes were 100% solar powered, but that those homeowners had that loan that they're paying, which was pretty hefty. Now, when they sold their home, they had to paid that off because it did not add to the appraised value. So the benefit came now to that buyer that now owns that home Now, they do have the value of those solar panels because they're 100% paid off. If not, it's a loan, still they don't own it, so they can't add to the value until you own it officially.
One thing I wanted to say, just to make sure it's not lost, because Chuck mentioned it a little bit ago, solar is amazing and it's where we need to be headed, but it's not the first step. Energy efficiency has to be the first step. You slap solar on an inefficient building and you're wasting electricity. So, with the new builds, that's less of a concern because you're building to Florida code, but it's when you're going in and maybe either applying a grant to an existing building or an older facility or doing a retrofit, it should be first and foremost high yield or high performing windows, insulation, appliances, lighting, roof, and then looking at solar to then be the next step.
Yeah, weatherization, basically.
Oh, yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
Peter, you mentioned making a motion. Can we make a motion to invite then energy partners to do a presentation to the board to see what their ideas are in terms of, partnering with affordable housing developers and the city specifically, to provide those incentives and those opportunities? Can we do that?
Is that something we can arrange, Sheridan?
Yeah, I can do some research, and I think the balance is probably shooting for the nonprofit sector rather than the private, so that we're not showing like any kind of favoritism or anything.
Yeah, I think I think we can bring that to the board.
We're going to have a motion today.
They're very decided.
I mean, I'm thinking about the new website, which is an incredible, great tool, right? I mean, we can even be promoting in that website, looking for energy partners, to partner with the city. I think that would be a great opportunity for those providers to come and present their products and their ideas. So.
Remember that symposium I was talking about?
Getting closer and closer to it.
It might be, seriously, it might be time to do something like that, to have a city-sponsored 2 days on a weekend, all right, that has energy, people, different components of all of this that could be featured in affordable housing going forward, but also getting those people in a room to where the discussions just turn into, well, maybe we can do this, or this could be brought together. I know I go off on rants, but I really think it's something we should consider doing. If you can get people in a room who are concerned or are interested and they have a shared interest, good things can happen.
Absolutely.
And what are we talking about? Having this room open on a weekend for a symposium? How hard would that be to do?
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I mean,
should that be the motion?
at least you're giving me for, I think it could do more than just energy, obviously.
Right.
Vendors there. But both with energy, landscaping, and water, those are all needed components.
I like the idea, Pete. I do. I think there could be a lot of value in it. When I think of it, holistically, it's how much participation are we going to get from the people that we're trying to teach this to? That's the hard part, is getting people in the room so they're learning from these experts that we bring in. So, if we're confident we can pull that off, I think it'd be a great thing to put together. I think that's the challenge, though. That's what comes to my mind. But I appreciate the suggestion, and if I get to a point where I think we can pull it off, I'd be happy to do it.
I think we can pull it off.
I think it's a matter of putting out invitations to people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to oversimplify it, but I think that if the city made an announcement that they were going to, on March 15th, they were going to have a symposium to cover these items or concerns or something like that,
March 15th of next year?
I'm just using it to give them plenty of time. I just,
He thought that was plenty of time too. Did you hear? He said that's plenty of time.
You don't think that's enough time?
I think this is a great point, and it actually brings me to a conversation that we're going to have a little later. So before we move on to that, just in the interest of Sheridan's time, Is there any other questions or comments as it relates to her presentation at this time?
Not for me.
No? Okay, great. I have one question. Is the Building Better Neighborhoods 2021 still available to watch online?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It is, oh my gosh, what is the URL? So myclearwater.com, and I think it's /BBN,
Okay.
Building Better Neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But I'll send it, I can send it to Chuck to send.
That would be great.
'cause I'm not fully
I would love
confident.
to
It's been a while.
watch that. I did the backyard composting program, as you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I have my bin. I haven't started it yet.
I was
but-
very excited. I personally dropped that off.
I know, it was
So
so
I got
great.
to see the 2
It was
dogs.
so great. It was great. It's just information that is out there, that is available to our residents, and that they may not know about. So it's great that we continue talking about it. You know, the Florida landscape, or the native landscaping that you were talking about, that's something that, you know, some people don't think about, the amount of time and resources that they put into their gardens just because it's not native plants. Like, there's plants that do great in Florida that you never have to water because they're native to Florida, and we should all think about that too. It's
Well, and they
one of
provide
the
that
stuff.
wildlife component.
Right,
So
right.
most of our homes have no food or habitat for our other community members, which are animals.
Yeah.
And by native plants, it's really the only food source, so.
So, sorry for my ignorance, but does the city have any incentive program for Florida landscaping?
We do not
No?
at the moment.
The county has a program which they're like, it's, you know, starting, well, they have already started already, but it's in the CRA. And I think it's, you get 50% rebate. I mean, there's a process. You have to take 2 classes, you have to present your landscape plan, all Florida-friendly plans. But then once you do that and you install it, then you get 50% of the money back that you spend, so which is a great program. I mean, it's 50% is something, you know?
That is
So,
amazing. I can check in with the county.
Yeah, yeah, you can check. I mean, Alexandra's doing a great job with that incentive, so.
That's awesome. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item 4.2 is recommend city council approval of the City of Clearwater fiscal year 2020-2021 consolidated annual performance and evaluation report. That was not a long name at all. Mr. Lane.
That's why we use acronyms.
I know.
So I'm going to use a PowerPoint to present to you the CAPER, okay, Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. We'll stick with CAPER. So what today is, it's a public hearing. It's required by HUD for us to present this in a public forum, and I'll take any questions, of course, at the end. So the CAPER, of course, is a report of our activity with the use of federal funds, which are, as you know, Community Development Block Grant Program funds, Home Investment Partnership Program funds. In the narrative sections of the report, we discuss our use of state and local funds. It really helps to give a better picture of the body of work we do in the housing division. It was a challenging year. And I think you'll all remember, for the first 3 months of the fiscal year, from October through the end of the year, we were completely immersed, all hands on deck, in a rent, mortgage, and utility assistance, emergency assistance program. So we pretty much abandoned all of our other programs, our typical programs, for 3 months, and then we had to get them started again. And when we got them started, now, you know, we began looking at a construction industry climate that was really very difficult to operate in. So really what we found was all of our activities related to construction were affected, and our numbers are down. So that's what the CAPER reflects, of course. So these are the resources. These are the expenditures on the federal side. You can see we spent about $2.1 million total. That that CRF money, that was the rent, mortgage, and utility assistance program, and those other funds. Of course, we have traditional home CDBG, the CDBG CV money, that's COVID related, and the revolving loan funds. That's, over the years, the program income we've taken in from CDBG, we have a revolving loan program with those funds. And some of that money, obviously the money we didn't spend will carry over to the current fiscal, which is important because we have some pretty big projects lined up that we're going to need those funds for. These are the expenditures on the state and local side. We spent about $457,000 in state housing initiative partnership program funds. That really was all program income. If you remember back last year, Governor DeSantis vetoed the statewide allocation of SHIP. So that was really just program income. We still have a small balance of Pinellas County Housing Trust Fund money. That comes in handy when we run into problems with projects. And as you know, we contribute, I think you are all aware, we contribute annually to 6 homeless service providers to the tune of a total of $250,000. Those providers are the Homeless Leadership Alliance, the Salvation Army, Homeless Empowerment Program, Hope Villages of America, Safe Harbor, and Pinellas Hope. Okay. So, where am I? Okay. So we always need to track those we assist. It's a HUD requirement. We fund 2 organizations with micro enterprise technical assistance. Through these 2 partnerships, we assisted 59 small businesses, entrepreneurs. Of the 4 single-family homes we completed in FY21, 1 was funded with home funds, and we assisted 70 households with home buyer education. The lion's share of the people we assist, as you know, is always through our public service providers. So that's where that big number is, 5741. So this is a number of people we assisted with the state and local funds. State and local funds are strictly housing. We funded rehabilitation of 9 rental units. In June, as you know, we increased our down payment assistance subsidy, and that really seemed to help. We had 3 loans that we processed in the last quarter. 2 of them were down payment assistance only, and we also funded, did a down payment assistance loan on a home that we also funded the construction. That project was for a very low income household. It was a $50,000 deferred loan, so they don't have to pay that back till they sell the home. Worked out pretty well. And that's less than 50% area median income. That's the definition of a very low income with the state. So these are the partners that we work with. I think you're very familiar with all of, most if not all of them. Hope Villages of America does a number of things, formerly RCS Pinellas. They do a number of things in our community. They have a domestic violence shelter, a family shelter. They have a food bank. They do some affordable housing. Directions for Living, very active with case management, homeless outreach. We've been partnering with them for years. West Care helps folks with some substance abuse issues. The Kimberly Home helps expecting mothers, also young mothers who have just had babies that are struggling financially. Gulf Coast Legal Services, we've been partnered with them for a number of years. Very critical during COVID. People facing, eviction, perhaps, wrongly. We refer people to them, and they've made a big impact. Maddie Williams Neighborhood Family Center, they administer programs to help families with school readiness and financial stability. Homeless Empowerment Program, they're a staple in our community when it comes to homeless shelters and services. The Intercultural Advocacy Institute, Hispanic Outreach Center is easier to say. They have a big impact around downtown, helping with Hispanic families. Community Kitchen and Resource Center, they've been a staple in our downtown gateway with feeding folks that need help. And PERC is Fresh Start as well. They help folks that that have recently been incarcerated and trying to get back on their feet. PERC mostly with job readiness programs under our program. Pinellas Opportunity Council, their chore services program. They help elderly folks that are really unable to care for their homes anymore. Really, really good program. And Miracles Outreach helps children that have been displaced from their families. So, as you can see, there's just a wide range of services that are available to our residents through our CDBG program. These are the partners that provide home buyer education classes. They also partner with us to process down payment assistance loans. Suncoast Housing Connections, of course, formerly known as Tampa Bay Community Development Corporation, and Bright Community Trust and Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Service we worked with for quite a while. So the micro enterprise partners that I mentioned earlier are Tampa Bay Black Business Investment Corporation. They have a heavy presence in our North Greenwood community. You may be familiar with their Catch program, where they educate new small business owners. Really good program they do annually. The Hispanic Business Initiative Fund of Florida, also known as Prospera. They primarily assist Hispanic business owners in our downtown Gateway area. We completed a facility rehab in the report year with the ARC of Tampa Bay. They're an organization that assists people with intellectual and developmental challenges. We're working on a facility rehab with the Salvation Army. That project has carried over to the current fiscal year. And we also worked with public facilities projects with Directions for Living, Hope Villages of America, and HEP. So these are the partners we worked with on housing projects. We completed 2 homes with Habitat for Humanity in the report year. We also completed homes with Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services and Emerge Community Development Corporation. We helped Community Service Foundation to rehabilitate a duplex on Tangerine Street in North Greenwood. It's now occupied by 2 very low-income families as part of the Going Home Coalition. We funded the rehabilitation of 7 units in Lexington Club at Renaissance Square. That's an affordable senior living complex on Missouri Ave. Our investment was a very small portion of a very large project. The 240 units, all of them were rehabbed through this project. And all but I think 3 of them were occupied. So you can imagine the difficulty in that type of project. They have experienced some challenges. I met with the property management team last week. Thankfully, we're getting very close to the end of that project. So this is a picture of Habitat for Humanity home. Ms. Camacho, can you guess where that is, the address? Put you on the spots. Blanchard Village on Trail, 691 Blanchard Village on Trail.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So we expect these folks to have some neighbors soon. We expect the lots adjacent to it to be a source of new single-family homes. So we'll see how that goes. It's also directly across the Pinellas Trail from the 12-unit project we did with Habitat. We completed that a couple of years ago now. So for ongoing housing activities on the owner-occupied side, we're working, I think, with on 4 new single-family homes. Our homeowner rehabilitation program, we had to pause that for the rent mortgage utility assistance program. We did some things to try to make improvements to that program, opened it up kind of late in the fiscal year, so we didn't have any completed last year. Right now, working with 3 families and right now I think they're in the bidding process. So we're moving forward with that. And on the rental side, went to council last week. The project at the former Fire Station 45, it's a tax credit project, 81 units, all under 80% of area median income. Construction costs have gone up about $5.4 million. I was asked by council to come back with a funding strategy. I did that at our last meeting. It was approved by council, so it looks like that project will move forward.
That's awesome.
The 171-unit mixed income mid-rise, that is on the corner of Washington and South MLK. Actually, Washington is the other. It's between Washington and South MLK. It's across the street from the Nolan. It's the last time we went to council with that, we told them it was on hold. They had some problems with their pro forma. It just wasn't penciling out. So we're working on an alternative financing strategy. So I think we're going to kind of codify that pretty shortly. I was actually speaking with Ms. Rivera after the AHAC meeting this morning about that project. It looks promising. The project looked dead in the water for a while. So if we can pull this off, I think it'll be a great accomplishment. Went to council last meeting. We have about $1.3 million in a loan at Palmetto Park Apartments. And that loan started back in 2002, I believe, 2001. And along the way, we've subordinated our loan to new financing for rehab. They've come to us again and asked us to do that again. I think it's a great opportunity to preserve housing without even putting another nickel into it. We're gonna defer that loan. You know, we may never see a dime of that loan. But they may come to us again in 15 years, ask us to do it all over again. So what we do, you know, what the benefit that's going to happen is it allows them to sell the property to an affiliated corporation, and then go and get tax credits from the state, and they're going to put about $10.5 million into that rehab. So it's going to be a substantial rehab for a project that's right in the center of North Greenwood neighborhood. If that fell and went, you know, by the way of stereotypical old public housing, it would be devastating to that community. So I think it's a very good opportunity for us. Hasn't closed yet. Hopefully it's going to close beginning of January. So keep your fingers crossed. I mentioned Lexington Club at Renaissance Square, the senior project that's under rehab construction. And we're also at the Kimberly home. They have a duplex that we're going to work with them on renovating. So these are the things we have going on, and a litany of other things as well. So the COVID-related activities, as you know, the rent mortgage utility assistance program, we helped about 250 people. And then the public services program, Directions for Living, we engaged them to help the folks that were being displaced at Prospect Towers. A new owner came in, made an investment, ran up the rents. People were being displaced. So Directions for Living helped us with that in a homeless prevention kind of program. Still in process. And I mentioned Gulf Coast Legal Services earlier, very helpful in this COVID era that we're seeing. So the caper, it's available for viewing on our website, myclearwater.com/affordable housing. The meat and bones of the report are on pages 15 through 34. That's really where we talk about the activities that we undertook during the program year. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions to check from the board? Okay, so now I need a motion to recommend city council approval of the keeper.
I'll second the motion.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries unanimously. Item 5 is old business, which is where I'll bring back that conversation we had just a minute ago. At our last meeting in July, and I think we've talked about it since, kind of on and off, but we discussed the opportunity to make a NAHAB presentation to the city council. Chuck said that he would check and see kind of like availability for that. There is an opportunity for us to present either in January or February. So I would love for this board to kind of discuss what we think, if we think that presentation is still something that we would want to do. And if it's the case, what's our objective? Do we want to present what this committee is currently working on as kind of like a report type, or do we want to bring ideas, some of the things that we were just discussing that have to do with sustainability as well, kind of like that cross work. So I would love to get some feedback from this board at this time. What do we think? Is this a good idea? Do we want to pursue that? And if we do, what do we want to talk about? Is that something that, because we're supposed to have a meeting in January of this board that would happen before the possible presentation to city council. So we don't have to make a decision today on what we want exactly that presentation to be. But I would love to start that conversation, decide if it's still the thing is, if it's still something we want to do, and if it is, what do we want this presentation to serve, right? Not, do we want to give them an update? Do we want to talk about, some of the things that we've been talking about that we want, 2022 to be a year that we discuss, et cetera, et cetera. So, love some feedback. Any feedback?
You're looking at me.
Of course, I know you have something to say.
I think we should make a presentation to the council. I don't know if January is the right time. I personally like to take some time and kick around some of the stuff that we talked about today. I think that's a direction for this, or one direction for this board to be following. And I'd like to present something to the city council that says, look, I'm sure they know what's been accomplished because Chuck and Denise update them, but this is what we've come as a board. We've been together a few years now, all of us, and this is what we've accomplished, but this is what we want to see going forward, and we're willing to take on this section of it. At least then they have an idea of what we're focusing on out here and what we're trying to accomplish, as long as, and hopefully everybody's on the same page with that. The council then could look to this board and say, okay, those guys are working on that. That's something that they're addressing. And it's not just a group of people out here that are flailing about. Not that we are. But this way here, the council has a good idea of what we are trying to achieve.
I agree with that, especially in the sense that if we are specific about some of the goals and objectives that we have for you know, the coming year, or even the 2, 3 coming years, then it would also open that door to, if we ever have to go to them to ask for anything, they already are in the know of what, you know, it's something that we've already discussed. So I like that idea.
Yeah, I think more time would be necessary, and it's interesting because the goals are there by the city staff, you know, the sustainable goals, you know, the affordable housing goals. So the goals are there. It's like, how do we support those goals?
Right.
But I would also like to have more time to discuss those ideas and how are we going to present it to city council.
Maybe next month we can do that, and take a section of time for the meeting and say, let's,
Yeah, so why don't I plan to agenda that for our next meeting?
Yeah, that's a great
Perhaps
idea.
Maybe between now and then, maybe Ms. Anderson and I can sit with Camille, because I believe Ms. Hebding would be delivering that presentation. And that way we can at least maybe create some structure for the conversation that we're going to have with the board. But it sounds like what you're kind of getting at is let's give them a little snapshot of, you know, of the accomplishments we've made, but maybe more importantly, let's talk about, you know, the objectives that we have. It sounds like that's
Absolutely.
kind of the structure, okay? So I'll get in touch with you, Camille, we'll set up a time and we'll kind of, you know, put some structure to this, and then we'll bring it to the board for discussion.
Excellent. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for that. Does the rest of the board have any old or new business to discuss?
No.
All right, great. Item number 6 is director's report. Mr. Lane, do you have anything additional?
Well, I just wanted to update you on the housing projects, and I think I just did at the end of my caper. The three major projects I got going on with Palmetto Park Apartments, the Blue Sky project at the former Fire Station 45 in downtown, and the workforce housing project. Those are things we're really focused on now to get to the finish line, because those are a lot of units that will be, one, preserved, two, created. So working hard on it, and hopefully we'll get it all to come together. So no, I think that's all I have.
Excellent. All right, item 7 is board members to be heard. I'll start to my right. Are there any comments?
I do not have any.
none.
Okay, great. I think we're commented out. All right, item 8 is adjourn. Our next NAHAB meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, January 11 of next year at 9 a.m. here in council chambers. And the board is adjourned. Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone.
All right.